Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journeys, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the JANUS Contemporaries lineup, which is associated with the Criterion Collection and the Criterion channel. One of its latest releases for this year of 2024. And that brings us to a title which is described as being from the year 2023. And this is a Blu-ray title. And the name of the filmmaker is Paul B. Preciado. And the name of the work is Orlando, My Political Biography. Is the incredibly moving and emotionally resonant work, which is described as being from the year 2023. And the name of the filmmaker is Paul B. Preciado. And the name of the work is Orlando, My Political Biography. And I am so fortunate to be able to have seen this work for the first time, thanks to this great JANUS Contemporaries Blu-ray release in connection with JANUS Films and the Criterion channel. And there's a number of things that one can say about this, including some of the discussion points and the supplements a little bit later in this video discussion. But before that, let me try to discuss or describe the structure of this work, Orlando, My Political Biography. And it could be said, I think, to be maybe a documentary or a film that is about the individual lives, testimonials, discussion points, views, perspectives, philosophies from a number of the interview participants, and incredibly captured and with a lot of focus and attention on the individual lives and their hearts and spirits, as well as the life and perspective and viewpoint of Paul B. Preciado, as well as how they all seem to be engaging with, in a very dynamic and a very organic and living way, how they are engaging with the story and subject matter and life of Orlando, the work Orlando by Virginia Woolf, as well as with all that it encompasses in terms of a story and the novel, the work Orlando, as well as how the subject matter can be said to be resonant and relevant to the lives of everyday people in 2023, 2024, and beyond. So it has a kind of timeless quality and also very personal quality and a personalized quality that is captured, as I say, so resonantly and so beautifully, and with a lot of heart and soul and a lot of direct honesty by Paul B. Preciado and all the interview participants from all walks of life and from various viewpoints and perspectives. Different generations are also represented here. This also is very in terms of the prominence of their personal stories, people from these individuals who are from the trans community. A number of people are speaking about their experiences, their family life, their sense of, say, identity and sense of self, and how they view the world through, say, the lens of sexuality, and for instance, through that lens of sexuality, how they have, in their own individual ways, have tried to, say, recognize certain aspects of, say, external viewpoints of sexuality on the one hand, as well as their own sense of who they are through the viewpoint of, say, sexuality, from their own viewpoint and from their own sense of self on the other. And sometimes those external points and internal points might be said to be engaging with one another, but at other points, I think a lot of the interview participants expressed in their own individual lives just how maybe non-congruent those lines might have been, to the point where there was a lot of maybe attempts at, or suggestions at a type of internal or very personalized and personal journey in terms of self-awareness and self-discovery, which in some cases, in some of the interview participants, they described sometimes as a kind of a process of maybe discovering certain maybe social mores that might have an overbearance of rigidity about them on the one hand, that again may or may not be totally congruent with their own sense of self and their own sense of, say, self dignity and also self identity, which is incredibly important in terms of a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction, and also emotional peace and also well being, which is, I think, at the very heart of this work, Orlando, My Political Biography, which I really love and appreciate in terms of the sense of how much Paul B. Preciado and company are really trying to, in a sense, encapsulate a sense of what it means to have a true, almost inner peace or emotional well-being in the context of the expressions of the lives of all the people that are participating and saying so much about themselves and showing us so much about themselves, and who they are and what it is they are feeling from the heart, which I find very, very lovely and beautiful and emotional and quite inspirational. And so from the lives of these interview participants, and who are acknowledging their own journey and their own exploration and their connections in terms of trans youth and transgender community, as well as transgender experiences, and also again how external, say, external forces or external maybe societal forces may or may not be totally in line with their own trajectories and their own sense of self-discovery in their own journey in their own lives. And we're talking about this type of interaction as somewhat, how should I put it, the interaction between sort of societal forces, or sort of rigid societal forces that might be trying to lead certain people into maybe one direction, and that leads into a discussion about transition surgery and physical surgery that leads to further, say, discussions from a number of the interview participants who have experienced in one way or another, and again in their own ways, one way or another, certain feelings or experiences with transition related surgeries or surgical based discussions. And that also has to do too with the medical profession, and how certain aspects of the medical profession have been, or the relationships or between these young people and their lives on the one hand, and how their reactions with certain aspects of the medical profession may or may not have had specific impact on their own journeys of self-awareness throughout their lives. And this is also reenacted in an interesting way as a shared experience on the one hand, that's also very intimate and personal on the other, in one of the creative moments of this very creative film, Orlando, My Political Biography, as a kind of socially relevant reenactment that is one of the conceits of this work. They're reenactments in a way that is, I think, very that is very soul-searching on the one hand, that's also very cathartic on the other, and that also has a sense of cinematic creativity as well as a kind of acknowledgement of a joint communal type of shared experience that is also very intimate and personal, based on the lives of the individual, which should be acknowledged. I think that has these moments are very rich, and they are very plentiful in a great work like Orlando, My Political Biography. But we never lose sight of the progress or the trajectory of the individual stories as told by these people who are willing to share a little bit of themselves with Paul B. Preciado and with us, the viewers. And so I'm very grateful for that experience. And also I should point out too that the creativity is, well, I mean, there's actually another aspect of the creativity that I think is really fascinating, which gives rise to the title, Orlando, My Political Biography. But before I get to that, I should also point out too that what I really admire is there is a sense of a type of self-expression and self-dignity that is on display. Also acknowledging certain adversities that have occurred with each of these individual stories in their lives, and having to do maybe with their sense of self, sense of who they are, sense of a kind of a sexual awareness, and also how that may have affected interactions with other people around them, as well as in terms of a sense of place and identity. I really admire about Paul P. Preciado's approach is that it is never judgmental. It is never casting a kind of moral judgment one way or another. It is never giving rise to any type of, say, maybe preconceived conclusion about how one should think or feel. What I really admire is that there is a room to let these interview participants really show us who they are and to tell us who they are in a way that I think is very honest and it's very earnest, and it's not requiring us, the viewer, to respond in any way, shape, or form, and not to cast judgment on us, or for us, the viewers, to cast judgment on the interview participants, but rather to really acknowledge this idea of giving space for an honest discussion about who people are and what they believe in, and what who they are as individuals, and what their hearts are, and opening up their hearts to us, which is, I think, at the very heart of really excellent filmmaking, excellent storytelling, whether it be in the form of a film like Orlando, My Political Biography, or whether it be in the form of any other really exceptional work of that capacity in, say, other films by the Criterion, or released by the Criterion Collection, or elsewhere. I mean, this is, I think, at the very heart of effective filmmaking, which is the ability for a type of line of empathy to be created between the viewer on the one hand and the people of the film on the other, which I think Orlando, My Political Biography, does really well, and allows us, to the viewers, to get to know these people in a way that is, I think, very honest, but also very warm and very welcoming. And without it's free from any type of casting of judgment, or any kind of need to be felt compelled to feel one way or another. I don't know if that makes sense. So I find that breadth of honesty and earnestness to be very, very admirable indeed. And so I really love and admire the way that this film gives us, the viewers, the opportunity to learn more about the interview participants and their interactions and experience in their lives, and doing it in a way that is also it's very friendly and very warm. And so I admire that very much. And also, I mentioned too the creative aspect of Paul P. Preciado's approach, and indeed the approach of the many participants here, which is there are ways in which this film acts as a kind of reenactment. And I don't mean reenactment in a way that's meant to be any way separate from, or anyway belittling the actual reenactment part itself. And on the contrary, the creative aspects of this are also meant in a very connected and organic way to highlight to us and to connect with us and to give us visual, say, illustrative examples of a kind of expressions of feeling, which I think make for those reenactments and those creative connections to be very valuable. Very, very valuable indeed, as well as being highly imaginative. And the main conceit that one can say is underlying the heart of this work, Orlando, My Political Biography, is Virginia Woolf and Orlando. And so the conceit is Paul B. Preciado makes mention of the story and conceits and themes that are interwoven by Virginia Woolf in the work Orlando. And the notion of sort of concepts of gender and perceptions of gender on the one hand, and then how the individual character or characters seem to be either reacting to or responding to such concepts of gender, and whether one can say those concepts of gender are maybe sort of culturally integral, or maybe those concepts of gender could be said to be maybe rigid and thus overly rigid to the point of not necessarily being a mode of expression for everyone concerned. In that way, what Paul P. Preciado does in a strikingly inventive way is taking Orlando and using that as on one has a kind of jumping off point for discussions of concepts of gender and identity and self-identity in connection with those concepts of gender, and whether those concepts of gender are emanating from societal mores, or what are perceived to be quote-unquote traditional societal mores, end quote, and how that may or may not be the most appropriate realm of contextual conversation with respect, let's say, for example, in the context of the discussion of the lives of people in the trans community and aspects of transgender and the lives of, for example, specifically many people who are part of this really fascinating work, Orlando, My Political Biography. Or there's a kind of back and forth between those maybe certain societal expectations, quote unquote, on the one hand, and personal journeys and lives on the other, again, as expressed through many, I think, concrete examples, as showcased, for example, by Paul Preciado and company here in a very vivid way. But going back to Orlando, using that as a kind of jumping off point for those, I think, very valuable discussions, and also using Orlando as a means of, say, taking a kind of creative control over one's life, or the trajectory of one's life. And therefore, this invites the conceit of each of the participants announcing to the world of the film that they are playing Orlando. And so they are, in a sense, giving us their own version of their Orlando story as it applies to their own lives. And so there's an interesting way of art and life interacting, or the way in which these people are really, in a beautiful way, taking Orlando and giving it life by showing us how it has been relevant to, or it is relevant to, their own lives. And they do it in this way of confidence, and also a way of questioning, and never being afraid of questioning, and giving us also a sense of real direct honesty. That is also very true, and also very welcoming and warm. So the application of Orlando and Virginia Woolf in this work is brilliant, sublime. It is kind of a stroke of genius. And it's done in a very, very creative way. I would say perhaps maybe a watch of this film might be benefited even further with a kind of knowledge, or maybe reading, or an understanding of the story or of Orlando, and specifically the one of the ways in which the character of Orlando has the character arc of Orlando is I think that knowledge is. Would be very beneficial upon prior to watching this work, Orlando, My Political Biography. But I think it is something that can be researched ahead of time, or it can be expressed in certain ways, or it can be maybe understood upon watching the work itself, Orlando, My Political Biography. So, but in any event, this key link between Orlando and Virginia Woolf on the one hand, and Paul B. Preciado in this work, and the people, the wonderful people who are involved in this work on the other, I think that is one of the key links here, and that's also a realm of creativity expressed by Paul B. Preciado and company, and also this way in which art and life seem to intersect, but in a way that is not meant to be incongruent, or not meant to be inherently contradictory, but there is a kind of room for a sense of of overall organic experience that can be shared by all, and especially to the individual experience can also be valued as a shared experience. And so I think that the way in which Orlando is used in that way as a kind of shared group experience, but also as an individual experience, I think is such a powerful thing, and it's such a great another manifestation or another expression of the concerns of Paul B. Preciado and company here, in the sense that um, a kind of line of empathy and a kind of room for or expression of the idea of fluidity. And I mean, the word I think is used by Paul Preciado is fluidity and a type of ever sort of dynamism. And this sense of fluidity and dynamism is very important in terms of how it is engaged with the growth and trajectory of the lives of everyone. And that can be in the scope and presence and breadth of discussions and explorations and self-discovery journeys about identity and sexuality. And also it is about philosophy and worldview and viewpoints. It could be also applied to, say, social, cultural currents and politics. It could also be applied to a sense of maybe family dynamics and how one has a sense of self vis-a-vis other people, and that can be family relationships, friend relationships, etc., and also one's professional outlook and um, feelings and viewpoints and aspirations about one's life, etc. So I think Paul P. Preciado's thesis, or one of his theses with this great work, is that this notion of fluidity and dynamism, is to be applied in a way that is it is applied for the sole purpose of respecting the individual and for giving room for the individual to uh, uh, go on the individual's own journey of self-discovery, which is their own personal story, which is their most important story, but is also a story that is filled with room for empathy, welcomeness, warmth, and also the possibility, I think, of a shared experience, which I find so brilliant and so fascinating about this work. I enjoyed it very much. I was very moved by this, and it was my first time to watch this work, courtesy of this Blu-ray. I was not at all disappointed. On the contrary, I, I, I was experiencing a kind of creative film uh, engagement that was also very. It had brilliant applications of style, while also telling these beautifully realized and intimate portraits of these people, these wonderful people who are sharing with me, who they are, a little bit about who they are. And I was welcoming that very much. And so it is a really fascinating film on display here under the Janus Contemporaries lineup, which is Orlando, My Political Biography. And so this is Orlando, My Political Biography, which is one of the latest of the lineup from the Janus Contemporaries Blu-ray lineup, which started last year and is continuing on very strong. And the latest example of such lineup being Orlando, My Political Biography, Paul B. Preciado. And I have the disc in the machine right now. This is a fairly recent work, described as being from 2023, so I don't see any information on the case itself or in the insert, which I've removed prior to the start of this video discussion. I don't see any information about the presentation or restoration details, etc., which is pretty standard when it comes to films from the Janus Contemporaries lineup. We're not going to get that kind of information in these lineups, but that's okay. That's okay. What we do get, for instance, is it's 102 minutes, color 5.1 surround in French with English subtitles, and 1.78 to 1 aspect ratio according to the back here. So, with that, let's now turn to what we get in addition to the film itself, which is great. So, as I mentioned, I have the disc in the machine here, and we have the Blu-ray menu image, which is mirroring, or which is the image that's also used for the cover art design for Orlando, My Political Biography, which is really wonderful. It's one of the people being interviewed and talking. during the film. So we have the movie, and then we have Meet the Filmmakers, which is a one-on-one discussion with Paul B. Preciado. This is approximately 15 minutes, and Paul B. Preciado talks about being a critical thinker, philosopher, and activist. And so filmmaking was rather new. But Paul B. Preciado is very concerned with and keen to discuss and about certain aspects, philosophical aspects and social cultural aspects regarding transgender representations in art, literature, and cinema. And so this brings the discussion by Paul P. Preciado in terms of how transgender people are represented in cinema, and finding maybe those sorts of representations maybe might be somewhat lacking in certain aspects, and maybe specifically in certain aspects of currency of maybe quote unquote mainstream films, etc. End quote. And the notion from Paul Preciado's point of view about how certain conventions, quote unquote social moral conventions, seem to be applied to general aspects of entertainment media, in terms of viewpoints on sexuality, and from Preciado's point of view, a kind of a binary construct thereof, and how that is not just applied, but how that has become a kind of normalization process in terms of entertainment culture. And that also has a kind of circular effect in terms of how people who view this may have aspects or concepts about how to view, say, notions of sexuality, physical sexuality, sexuality and identity, and representations of gender, etc. And so from that, Paul P. Preciado talks a little bit about life growing up, born in 1970s Spain, aspects of childhood discussions, and then talking about discovery of Virginia Woolf in Orlando, and also speaking too about certain, say, adaptations of Orlando before, perhaps quite memorably, the work by Sally Potter, but that for this project, for Paul P. Preciado, Orlando, My Political Biography, this is a project from Preciado's perspective, and also borrowing from the lives and testimonials of the people who are participating in the interviews. So. And one of the really fascinating discussion points here is the notion that's brought up about seeking to not have what Preciado describes as normative representation, end quote, which the idea of not maybe imposing some kind of concept on people, but rather letting people discover who they are. So I find that that approach, and maybe in filmic terms, that can be something as seemingly simple as giving someone the microphone and giving them the space to speak. This itself is a very powerful gesture, and from Paul B. Preciado's point of view, it is not just a filmic gesture, a very powerful gesture, and one that respects the individual on both sides, in terms of the people being interviewed and also the viewers, but also it itself is inherently political. So I find, therefore, Paul B. Preciado's work to be that much more prescient, in a manner of speaking. So. He also speaks too about certain influences in terms of the way in which Godard, Jean-Luc Godard, aspects of cinema are interwoven in the style of the work Orlando, My Political Biography, and also too the very spirit of Godard's work. I think Preciado quotes in particular, specifically, the Godard work of the 60s, which has a very overt political overture about them. So it's almost film as a political expression is another linkage between Preciado and Godard. And also to the idea of fiction versus documentary. I mentioned at the start that this is a kind of documentary, and it is. It is also something that is relying on fiction or relying on a creative, say, creative. Cinematic junctures that are, relying on a kind of, in a sense, a kind of a layering between blurring the lines between quote unquote documentary and that sort of the cinema verite aspect of documentary on the one hand, but also uh, uh, on purpose, calling attention to the creative nature, almost the staging of certain setups, the way that the participants are interacting within the same space, and in almost a playful, like a theatrical kind of way, but never losing sight of the core function of those bursts of kind of theatrical based creativity, namely the further expressions of their individual lives, which are themselves nonfiction, right? So. And from Paul B. Preciado's point of view, another objective of working with a work like Orlando, My Political Biography, is describing what Preciado describes in terms of queer trans activist methodology, and having that be one of the sort of focal points, if you will, in terms of Preciado's own cinema philosophy, and a kind of emancipatory aspect that cinema has, sort of cinema language has. I mean, there's a very powerful scene involving discussions of transition and transition related surgery. And there's a really interesting way in which the film discusses and handles the physical aspects of the surgical procedures on the one hand, but also looking at it from maybe certain individual journeys, which may or may not choose to turn to, say, physical surgical procedures in the context of a discussion of or a journey of self-discovery in the context of transition. And so this is also, I think, very much apropos the thesis, or one of the theses of the work, which is the idea of dynamism and the fluidity being applied to the individual self-discovery journey, might lead to different discoveries depending on who the person is. And so for some people, even the group that is being interviewed here, for some that might have been on the journeys of physical surgical procedures, and for others it might have the answers might have been elsewhere. And so I think one of the points that is raised in one of the really creative aspects of Orlando, My Political Biography, is using that and calling attention to this, and really examining this concept or the notion of transition, what this means. Even the notion of transition is itself, or could be regarded, and perhaps from Preciado's point of view, maybe should be regarded, or we are invited to regard it as itself being dynamic and fluid, and it can mean different things. And so, and there is a fascinating way in which Preciado and company take the context of discussion and throw in the actual text of Orlando, the text of Virginia Woolf, in this creative way that the text itself is almost the focal point of the transition process, or the surgical process, using those sort of modal forms that are being employed here by Preciado and company. So this is a really just quite a it's a very inviting way to open up this topic. So I admire that very much. And so, in any event, this is the one-on-one discussion with Paul B. Preciado, which is one of the supplements found on the disc. And so, please check it out if you can. It is approximately 15 minutes. And I didn't know about this work. It's again my first time watching this, and I'm learning about this work, and also Paul B. Preciado. So this Meet the Filmmakers discussion is incredibly valuable. So I admire that very much. So this is approximately 15 minutes. And then we have, as the second and final supplement for this, the trailer, which is also very good to watch, so please check that out if you can. And then we have the insert, or as I mentioned before, this came with the insert. It's a simple fold insert with some pictures that represent the film on the one hand, on the front, on one side, and then we have this side, which is the great essay, which is by Michael Joshua Rowan again, which is called Orlando, My Political Biography, Novel Interpretations. And that's a very, very good writing and very on point, apropos. So please check out that writing if you can. It's well written and incredibly to the point, and quite good indeed. So, my dear friends, this is my experience with Orlando, My Political Biography. Again, one of the latest releases in the great JANUS Contemporaries lineup this year, 2024. So, all right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including Orlando, My Political Biography, including other works in the JANUS Contemporaries lineup and beyond. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.